From a defense attorney perspective, I do not believe that without a fundamental, colossal shift in what the investigation has established, that anyone is ever going to get arrested in the death of young Nolan Wells. And I want to cover why. A few caveats. Again, I am taking this approach from a defense attorney perspective. I'm not saying that my conclusions or theories are ethically, morally right, that this should be the way it is, just that I think this is how it's going to pan out based on what I've seen from what I do for a living. So I'm going to take the viewpoint of all the kids on the island that were not Nolan Wells, right? That's who we're focusing on now. No one gets arrested. Here's why. One, we have not yet established anyone being with Nolan at the time of his death. Okay? For every possible theory, there is an equal possible alternate theory. Okay? There's no one theory that, by the evidence, by what we've seen, makes one more probable than the other. And only one can be true. So that's the first hurdle. The second is I've not yet heard a motive for anyone. Now, motives are not in of themselves necessary. You'll see a lot of times when you have a crime committed that's caught on camera, you don't need the motive to establish the crime occurred. The video is establishing the crime occurred. But in instances like this, where you don't have your smoking gun, so to speak, you need to have a reason why someone would commit the crime to accuse them of the crime. And I've not heard that for anyone on the island. To the extent you believe that no one was killed because he was black, that very well may be the case. And that motive, that theory, can apply to almost every other kid at the island. And police cannot simultaneously charge everyone when they can't even exclude anyone. So you're going to need more than that. Why did any one person have more of a reason to kill Nolan than anyone else? And so these are the issues that are going to come up. So let's, again, start with that there's no evidence of anyone even being with him at the time of his death. The closest that we've seen so far, the closest we're going to get to, is the 911 call made by the mother of one of the males that were at the island. The call between the son and his mother probably is never going to come out unless one of them snitches, because on a lot of levels, as I discussed with Willie D on his podcast, it's going to be protected. It could be attorney-client because the mother is an attorney, she's a judge. It's also inherently a family member. It's not spousal immunity, but it's protected. There's no one forcing the other to tell on them. And by this point, as I theorized very early on, everyone's lawyered up by now. No one's talking because everyone's being legally advised not to talk. As a defense attorney, I have clients that come to me. Some admit they are guilty, some swear they're innocent, and some are guilty and some are innocent. They all come to me for the same reason, because whether they are guilty or not, they don't want to be accused of a crime. And no one here wants to be accused of murder, whether they committed the murder or not. They all have the same interest in not being accused of that charge. So the only thing we're going to get ultimately, eventually, is the call that the judge mother made to law enforcement. I suspect, my theory is that call is going to be as basic and as simple as there's a young man, Nolan Wells, who is missing, period. If she's been practicing law more than a day, she knew better than to say anything that would implicate anyone, especially her son. So, because now her son, just by having made the call, is right now the closest person to or with knowledge of Nolan's death. How it happened, why it happened, where it happened. Because he's the one that made the call to a lawyer. He's the one that made the call to his mom, who made the call to 911. How did he know to make that call? Right? He knows something. He knows something, and he's not shared it. And even to the extent he is not immediately culpable of Nolan's death, he knows something about someone who is, or how it happened, or why it happened. So the call, if it ever comes out, is going to be a nothing burger. It's going to be, Nolan Wells is missing, you should go look for him. And that'll be that. I've said before with Willie D on his podcast that I think the judge probably walked a very fine line to make sure that she did not become an accessory after the fact if it's established that he did die by unnatural causes and beyond an accident and that someone's involved. She probably would have known better. As to everyone else on the island, again, no one's saying anything because no one wants to be the last person to be known to be with or have seen Nolan, because it makes them the best plausible suspect. I discussed how there's a reason why all the kids didn't touch Nolan's cell phone and his keys and didn't really help the family. And I understand from a personal level, from a morality level, why wouldn't they do that? But again, if I'm a defense attorney, I'm telling my client, you don't touch the evidence. You don't let your fingerprints, your DNA, be the last DNA on any evidence related to a death. And again, odds are the judge mom told her son, you don't say anything, and it's probably a good idea to tell your friends to go lawyer up as well. And they probably did that. They probably know at the least, to invoke their Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and they have attorneys, their Sixth Amendment right to have their counsel present. So at this point, you're going to get nothing from any of the kids. Since I last said anything publicly on this case, I know earlier today, late yesterday, the supposed best friend of Nolan, who was white, made a statement, and that was a really self-serving statement. It did not help him. It may come to hurt him. I'm not saying it is or isn't genuine. I'll let you decide. But even if it was genuine, it's self-serving. All it was him kind of making himself out to be a hero, to say he told Nolan to get on the boat and Nolan didn't. If you felt that strongly, why didn't you do more? If you were that concerned, what else did you do after that? When's the last time you talked to Nolan after that, if at all? What attempts did you make? Him just coming out and saying, I'm his best friend, I told him to get on the boat that was taking on water, and he didn't. What have you done to progress the investigation, to progress anyone getting any answers? Nothing. You just put yourself in the spotlight. And again, if I was his attorney, I'd be really pissed off. So there was no reason to make that statement or any statement, and that statement was just foolish. Again, that's as his attorney. You don't say anything. So now you have an island full of kids. No one's been established to be the last person with or near Nolan. So now you need a motive. You need a motive of someone that was on the island. From what I remember, Nolan was possibly drinking. Again, I'm not casting aspersions on that. I'm just sharing what I believe to be one of the facts. He may have been drinking at some point. Does not mean he wasn't intoxicated when he died. But I'll get to why I bring up in a moment. And he may have stayed behind because he had a romantic interest in a young white girl. So let's talk about that. I think history tells us that things can go sideways when one or more people are drinking alcohol. Whether Nolan was one of the people that was intoxicated when he passed, whether others were, whether they all weren't, it's going to play some kind of factor. So was alcohol involved? And we've seen alcohol-infused rage lead to crimes. So it could be something like he and or others were drunk and they got into an argument about something legitimate, illegitimate, anything. Or they just started getting handsy and rowdy and he wound up dead. Intentionally, recklessly, but he's dead. Or someone had an issue with Nolan wanting to get intimate with this young lady on the island. Did she have a boyfriend? Did she have another male who was courting her? I don't know that. That would be a motive, but we've not heard that from anyone. We've not heard from the girl. Did she know Nolan was interested in her? How did she feel about him? Did she rebuke him and tell everyone, oh, Nolan's coming on to me, I don't like it? Did she say nothing? I don't know. But because none of these questions can be answered, the police have nothing to charge anyone with. That again, they couldn't equally charge anyone else with or everyone with. That's not enough. You have to be able to narrow it down to a suspect. You can't arrest John Doe and Paul Smith and his friend and and everyone else on the simultaneous theory. It was him or him or him or him, because now you've already said there's no probable cause for at least 3 of the 4, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you go. So they're going to have a lot of issues with, they can't pin down a person, a reason, a place, anything. And these kids, again, I think they've been counseled, have done a very good job of circling the wagons, insulating themselves, and by extension, each other. And there's no basis to make an arrest. Something extraordinary needs to come out. A video would be best, right? I've said repeatedly, they should be checking the GPSs on all the boats. Don't rule any one boat out. I know people believe he was on the first boat. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But why limit yourself if you want to that one boat? Why are you not equally looking at all the boats, all the GPSs, all the coordinates, all the surveillance footage, all the cameras? Why are you not talking to all these kids and getting, all the social media, everything, anything? Vet it. It's not being done. So I leave it to you to critique the investigation, law enforcement. Again, we've not yet seen the medical examination from the state in its totality. We're waiting on toxicology. That will mean something regardless of what the finding is. And we've not yet seen the result on what his condition of his skin was and his throat, which was removed, and the family's independent medical examiner could not examine the throat. So there's going to be that. Again, there was markings on the back of the head. I could think of a lot of reasons why that could have happened to Nolan. Some innocent, some not so innocent. But no one reason can be ruled out to the exclusion of the other. They're all plausible, which means you have nothing to go on. Let me know what you think. I welcome your feedback, your comments, your critiques. Again, this is as a defense attorney viewpoint. I'm not saying this is what I want to see happen or what should happen, but I'm telling you, as a defense attorney, if any of those kids were my clients, this is exactly what I would be advising to do. You say nothing, you do nothing, you private your social media, you keep everything to yourself, you don't talk to anyone without your attorney, because the police, they have nothing. They have nothing.